Section 259R of the executive law was designed with compassion. It was designed to allow nonviolent felons who are about to pass to die in a hospital or in a hospice. I submit it was not designed to let someone who with such violence killed others get out of prison for conditions he had when he went into prison. When William LeVea was 79 years old, when he chose to drive drunk, he chose to aggressively attack other drivers on the road with his vehicle, using his car as a 4,000-pound weapon. At that time, he had mild dementia. He had thank you. He had cardiovascular disease, he had arthritis, he had mild dementia at the time. He has those conditions, as would any 79 or 83-year-old have those conditions. We are all in the condition of dying. None of us will live more than 100 or so years. The question is there anything about his condition that would warrant this man who has ended and other lives, who has created so much pain and suffering, who still has the potential to get behind the wheel of a car, to get out of prison early and risk more victims, more pain, more suffering, taking more lives. There's nothing that I can think of that would justify letting him go out of prison early, and we would ask that everybody join us in voicing their protestations of him getting out early. If anybody else wants to speak, or if there's any questions. Yes, very good point. In the packets, there are some contact, probably more applicable for visuals than for me saying it, but April 14th, we had a very short time frame, less than 2 weeks, from notification to the close of submissions on this. So if someone wants to submit objections to the release of William LeVea, they need to move quickly by April 14th. They can mail to the New York State Board of Parole, which is 1220 Washington Avenue, Building 2, Albany, New York, 12226-2050. They can go online to https://www.parole.ny.gov/letters, letters.html. They should all reference his inmate identification number, which is 11 B as in Baker 0677. There's also 0677, it's in the packets, all of this information. There's also an online petition, in addition to the handwritten thousands of signatures gathered here, which is http://sign/William-LeVea-up-4. And there are thousands of signatures on there of people from our state objecting to his early release. Anything else we need to mention? He has, as part of his plea, he waived his right to appeal from the conviction. He waived his right to appeal from the sentence. To now try to pull an end run around this lawfully imposed, agreed upon, negotiated disposition is just wrong. The family met with us many times trying to resolve this, making sure that we could all live with the disposition. And again, our belief at the time was that this sentence would hold him until his death, that he would never be able to be a danger to Chris's children or anyone else's children, that he would stay there until he met Judgment Day. To try to release him now for conditions he already had is just wrong. Shouldn't be. Good point. Thank you, Diane. Within the Department of Corrections, they have many facilities. They have psychiatric facilities, they have juvenile facilities, and they have maximum security facilities. They also have medical centers, regional medical centers, for people that need to be hospitalized for long-term critical care. William LeVea is not in a regional medical center. He is not in a facility with a regional medical center. He is in a general population facility. If he is indeed so ill that they feel the need to release him, shouldn't he be in a regional medical center first? Shouldn't there be some finding that that is insufficient care for him, that he is so critically ill? So until he's exhausted that, I can't even imagine he'd be up for early release. Frankly, I think there's not a person up here that thinks he should get out regardless. But certainly, if they haven't exhausted the possibilities within corrections, they should not be looking at releasing him from corrections.
Now, you mentioned the other conditions you had.
Yes.
But have they spoken to you at all specifically about what they are considering to let him out on?
That's one of the things that's troubling about this, is that they have allowed the victims' families a right to be heard, not in person, but by presentment of letters and sympathy and petitions and so forth. They are excluded from the parole hearing. They are excluded from the diagnosis and the medical reports that are theoretically supporting the need to release them. As I said, the information we have so far is all for conditions that were known and the family was aware of at the time, that he was already undergoing, and that unfortunately many of us when we reach our 80s will be undergoing as well, but not a basis to release him from this agreed upon sentence early. Yes?
Has his parole hearing been changed to May?
There has been, the good news is we've already had a multitude of people reaching out to the parole board, and I assume objecting to his early release. Because of that, he is still going to be meeting in private with the parole board on, I believe it's April 19th, April 21st, but they have moved the actual determination date back to May 19th. They expect a decision by the 27th of May, I believe. But our submissions are still required to be in by April 14th. What will happen is they will be duplicated. They will be distributed to all of the parole board members, who will have an opportunity to read them and hear from them, and then hopefully act on their wishes and deny this application. Any other questions? Good question, Charlie, thank you.
Has anybody ever been denied for
I assume, I don't know where they have the statistics, it's sort of a secret proceeding that they don't share with the public. I don't know what the statistics are. I assume they've released people. I hope they've made decisions of people not to release. Again, as I indicated, it initially started out as a non-violent murders and sex offenders were not allowed. But whether you kill someone with a handgun, a knife, as in our trial this week, or a 4,000-pound piece of steel traveling 80 miles an hour, the devastation, the violence of that crime is the same. The impact on the loved ones is the same. This defendant should never get out.
And also reading the original stories from our station, I was shocked by when apparently he was told at the scene that he had killed someone, and he said, "I don't care." So tell me your thoughts on that. Obviously, not a lot of remorse from this person either.
No remorse whatsoever. In fact, even the admission of guilt, the plea to prevent him from going to trial and facing more punishment was barely attained. He has accepted no responsibility for this. There's been no remorse. You've heard a little bit about the traumatic nature of this. He was chasing him at high speeds. Chris was trying to avoid him. He tried to get in front of a car so he wouldn't be behind him, and he was squeezing in there. Ultimately, at the end of the chase, he bumped Chris's rear bumper toward the shoulder, which put the nose of his truck across the center line into oncoming traffic. A full-size truck, Mr. LeVea's truck, could not avoid striking him. It ripped the cab of the pickup off of the chassis, ejected Chris and the motor, and then another vehicle struck the empty chassis, and it wasn't until, how many weeks later, months later, 2 months later?
It was a couple months later before we were able to let Patrick Walton know that Chris's body was not in the chassis when he hit the chassis. Because during that time, for all he knew, he was the one that caused the ultimate death. But the accident investigation by the Cato County Sheriff's Department determined that Chris was not in the chassis when Pat hit the truck.
But the violence, you can see the damage on the full-size Chevy Silverado. If it hadn't been such a large truck, we'd probably have a double homicide here, frankly. It was only by the grace of God and the size of the truck that Mr. LeVea was in that his injuries weren't more than they were, and they were significant as it was. It was just a tremendously violent, debris scattered,